Thank you, Professor Dossett. Wonderful presentation. Pleased to have you here with us live now. And thank you for making the time to present and to answer what are a lot of questions, more than we'll probably have time for. With that, I'd just like to get your perspective, because you did focus on meditation and really, and the mental aspects of wellness. I know that you're a major advocate for really a balanced diet of wellness. And in this program, we've talked about not only mental wellness, but also physical wellness in terms of activity and nutritional wellness, et cetera. And I just wanted you to give have a moment to maybe comment on that.
Oh, thanks so much, Dr. Fishman, for the opportunity to present. And yeah, it's all important and it's all necessary. The biggest contributor to the burden of chronic disease, particularly the physical health that we have in this country, is lifestyle. And that's our diet, it's our inactivity physically, it's the substances that we're putting in our bodies, and it's the sea of stress that we live in. And so it's all important and all necessary for our wellness.
So you speak so eloquently about the control that we could have if we make those choices. What advice do you have for someone who really has never even considered having that control, let alone developing a practice of meditation? How do you get from here to there?
Yeah, that's a great question, because life can seem so overwhelming, particularly in the midst of that sea of stress. And so I really encourage people to start with what's most important to them, what is going to give them the biggest bang for their buck, or what's most meaningful to them. So maybe it's starting with just a simple diet change. Or maybe it's, I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk on my lunch hour 3 days a week. Or maybe I can just start with this breathing practice and do that a few times a day. So starting with something small when one is feeling overwhelmed and one doesn't have a lot of time can oftentimes be helpful. Sometimes have a little bit more bandwidth and they just like, I just want to take a big bite of this and take this on and really make some major changes. And that can be very effective too. So when I see people as patients, I really try to sort of meet them where they're at and figure out how can we tailor this for you in your life.
And I thank you for that. I think you kind of tipped your hat to this, that meditation isn't the only way to be mindful. And I wonder if you can unpack that. We have a couple of questions around that. And, what if you don't want to sit and meditate, but you want to have a mindful life?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of ways to practice mindful awareness. A lot of us, most of the time, run around on autopilot, right? Walk into a room and you're like, wait, what did I walk in here to pick up or get or do? And so starting with very simple things, bringing mindful awareness to washing the dishes or brushing your teeth or some simple daily activity to begin to build that muscle, if you will, that those neurons in the brain, those neuronal connections. And then we can begin to start to expand that practice into other things. In terms of, can you get the same benefits from a walking meditation or other mindful awareness activities as you do from a sitting meditation practice? We really don't have the data to know if the benefits are exactly the same. There's certainly some similar benefits. We know that yoga and Tai Chi, for example, have a lot of health benefits that have been associated with them. Do you get all of those areas of the brain lighting up as when you meditate? I'm not sure.
So there's a lot we know and a lot we don't know, as in all aspects of the work we do.
Any practice of this has benefit, right?
That's right.
So even doing a little bit of something is better than nothing.
So exactly what you say was where I was going, that you talked a little bit about the telomere effect, and we know a bit about it, and it's been mentioned several times in this course, in this 4-week program. And what we understand is that it's not just mindfulness, but it's also exercise and diet that affect telomeres. But I wonder if you could speak to the synergy of those things with around the data of telomeres, but also your understanding of bringing it all together in terms of that mind-body wellness lifestyle that I think most of us would like to have for our health and quality of life.
Yeah. I think they all reinforce each other, when we're eating a healthy, whole foods, plant-based diet, we're not getting those sugars, blood sugar swings, right? And that helps regulate our mood and our state of mind more easily. When we get out in nature and we move our bodies, we just feel better mentally. And it's also easier to sit still for a meditation because we have less tension in the body. So all of these practices help to reinforce each other and help support each other.
So thanks for, yeah, I think we hear a talk on mindfulness and people think, well, mindfulness is the key. You convinced me, but again, we still have a need to be well in our diets, well in our movements, well in our environments, both socially and physically. And I know these are things I've learned from you. Yes,
and if you're meditating a lot, but you're still eating a junk food diet, it's going to take its toll.
So there are some very specific questions. I'll read one to you that you may see. I'm a violinist. If I spend the meditation time thinking about a piece of music that I'm memorizing, actively involving the brain to memorize details of bowing fingers and notes, would this be killing two birds in one stone, accomplishing memorization as well as achieving the benefits of meditation?
That's an interesting question.
I thought
so. It certainly would probably help with learning that piece of music better. And a lot of athletes and performers use visualization as part of their training, right? And so this is kind of a sort of a mind body practice. So they would definitely have that benefit. Would you get some of the other benefits associated with meditation? I don't know. I would say try it out and see how you feel. Do you feel a state of ease, of joy, or does it feel like you're just too much in your head? Because meditation is, and it's ultimately not about thinking; it's about being. And the techniques are really just to get us to that place of stillness where we can be. So.
Well, it's interesting that, I was thinking about that question and wondering maybe that will be one of your next big NIH-funded studies. But really, each of us has that study within ourselves, right? That to test and see how we feel and what works for us.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about, the ancient yogis. They said, don't just take our word for it. Practice this in the living laboratory of your own life.
We have a question, I think the last question was about using an idea as a focal point, which was kind of the mantra that you led us through. But what about things like noise? And there's a lot of buzz, speaking of noise, buzz about white noise, green noise, brown noise, pink noise, and other forms of stimulation, like using tapping or touch as a focal point. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes having sound in the background can be helpful as a focal point. Again, it's sort of about what happens with that focus. Do you get caught up in a whole story, and are you going on this mental thought exercise, or is it helping you to really just bring your awareness inward into a calmer space. So, it can vary. There are many, many different meditation techniques out there and lots of different foci for focus. But yeah, some things work better for some people than others. And when I teach meditation and teach courses, I find routinely that, different people gravitate to different practices and find different tools more helpful for them.
So, in terms of these different ways of doing it, you mentioned walking meditation, and then we've had some questions about other meditative practices like Tai Chi, which
Yep.
I think may or may not be meditative, and many other practices. I wonder if you could, speak a little bit to your thoughts about connecting movement and meditation.
Yeah, so Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga are probably the most common mind-body movement practices out there. And there's a lot of data on physical and mental health benefits with those practices, particularly yoga and Tai Chi. Tai Chi in this country has stayed much closer to its original roots than yoga has. So you can find some yoga practices that are very traditional, that are not just asana and physical posture, but oftentimes incorporate meditation and breath practices, and some that are just really glorified exercise with very little mind-body components. So it really depends a lot on how it's practiced.
Yeah, it sounds like mindfulness is what you make of it. And, I think we'll end with a question, really about tying this together in a person's life. Do you need to have a formal meditation practice to get these benefits, or are there other ways that you can incorporate a mindful state of a mindful mindset and get the benefits without meditating? And I know you talked about this a little bit, but a little more on that.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly get some benefits with incorporating some of these other practices. I think if you really want to go deep, you will get that most easily with meditation. But for some people, going deep in meditation may take time, right? And so yoga or Tai Chi or the practices may be really helpful tools for beginning to cultivate that state of awareness to a point which they can get more out of a sitting meditation practice.
Professor Dossett, thank you for joining us. We hope to have you back.
My pleasure. Thank you very much,
Much
Dr.
appreciated.
Fishman.